This is Identity at the Center.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good. We're at InfoSec World 2025. And as usual with most conferences, like the hallway conversations are worth the price of admission.
Hallway Con is all about it. So that's the good part.
So I've had a few conversations with folks about they're using managed service providers to provide identity, not only here at the conference, but it's come up a couple of times. So we decided let's do a podcast about that topic.
Yeah, I don't think we've actually hit this topic before. And so it's they're out there. I think there's always some trepidation. Okay, well, do we use a partner for this? Can we do it ourselves? The answer is probably different for everybody. So it's not like a one size fits all solution, but it's definitely an area where from an identity perspective, we have to think about, okay, well, how do these people get access to things? If they're managing my data, what about other parts, other clients they might have, right? Things like that. So I thought it'd be interesting. And so again, I'm going to be distracted because again, looking past you as the episode recorded earlier, there's a pumpkin patch and people in wizard hats across from here.
Well, Halloween is this week, so you got to cut them a little bit of slack. Like they're trying to be festive,
right? And
we have Halloween candy.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're at a conference, right? You need to have something to hook people coming in.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's interesting. Like for us, hey, we're doing a podcast in the middle of like the RSM and Identity at the Center, expo hall space. And so, we're all trying to do our thing.
And we have Butterfingers.
And other coffees. And who do we thank for the Butterfingers? It's our guest today, Mr. Mike Reiring, who joins us from Tampa, coming in here to Orlando.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for bringing the candy. Yeah, so candy will get you everywhere on this podcast.
I had to be careful to bring candy that I don't love. So that I didn't personally eat it all. So, yeah.
That's a good strategy. So there's 100 grams and crunches in there.
Yes.
And that has been a problem for me. I would just say that up front right now.
So for me, the thing that's in there that I like is the Butterfinger. And I managed to resist for the most part.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here with us. So you're a member of the RSM team here. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself, but we're all part of the RSM and was like, okay, we're gonna have a conversation about managed providers and kind of things like that.
Yeah.
So tell us who you are. What do you do?
So I'm a principal in our technology consulting space, and I work on managed services. So I both, I'm a leader in the practice that delivers managed services to our clients. And I serve clients. So, been doing the managed services thing for a while. So before I came in, I'm a recovering nerd. They don't let me do that anymore. Right? I'm not allowed to actually touch the keyboards. But,
So how did you get into the technology space? So the origin story of you.
Yeah. I went to school for computer science. But I haven't ever actually been paid to write any codes.
Is that a good thing?
I guess. It depends what you mean by code, right? So I've scripted a bunch of stuff, right? Because most IT people have done some sort of automation, but I've been an infrastructure person my whole life. So before I came to RSM, I used to implement things like Microsoft Active Directory and Exchange servers and, back in the day, Teams used to be called a thing called, what was it? OCS, Office Communication Server. So I used to implement that thing. And talking to you about identity is always interesting to me because that whole Active Directory thing is it is at least in part an identity system. It's an identity provider.
It's the gift that keeps on giving and will never die. Everyone uses Active Directory for the most part.
We can call it Contra, we can call it whatever we want, but it's Active
Whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, there's a directory somewhere. And I think, just my own experience.
I don't know. I've never had that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Mike, one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on the show is that you're heavily involved in the MSP kind of focus.
Yeah.
And that's just it seems like it's a rapidly evolving area, and a lot of organizations are doing it now. We're reaching the identity practitioner listener base, and these are folks who are having to secure access for their MSP providers. What have you seen in terms of the evolution over the last few years, and what are some of the biggest impacts to those identity people?
Yeah. The standard of what good stewardship is has certainly evolved, right? In a lot of ways, in the identity space, in what minimum security standards are for various industries have evolved, and people have had to get a lot more mature, right? The threat landscape has definitely evolved and changed just in the last 5-6 years. You look around, and we're at this, it's a cyber conference, and you walk down the halls and you see the names of vendors that were selling antivirus products, 20 years ago. And you're like, wow, I didn't know they were still in business.
Right, yeah.
Because I think of them as like a legacy signature-based antivirus provider. And then you see other people that are, didn't exist back then, and now they're leaders in this space for things like EDR and detection and response, and that whole space has changed. Identity's changed too. So when I first started working in the managed services space, we always had, the companies that I worked for at the time, we used shared accounts to access our client environments. Even the most privileged accounts, the domain admin, enterprise admin level accounts were a shared account, Acme MSP admin, client name.com. Right?
And almost nobody wants to use that anymore, right? That's
right. Yeah.
Not the leading practice.
And we should just call it that, right? So it's really easy to identify in the list of accounts, right? But that whole thing has changed, and the vendor landscape has evolved to support some of that, and in other ways is way behind, and you have to work around it and use third-party stuff to help either federate or do just-in-time privileged access to the client environment, those sorts of things. So and of course our clients, in RSM we serve the mid-market, which that means a lot, right? That means very, very small, immature environments. I serve a not-for-profit that has a budget of $20 million a year for the whole not-for-profit, not for IT, not for identity, not for cyber, the whole budget, right? And then I serve other clients that are, in, the billions of dollars space. So their maturity and their expectation and their ability to even participate with you in securely and responsibly accessing their environment is, this massive continuum, right? So it's not boring when you think about it from that perspective.
Yeah. And do you feel like you're walking around here in the vendor expo hall here at the conference, do you feel like the technology solutions are evolving to kind of solve those problems well, or is this still a major gap in terms of, a focus on solving the problem of having multiple third parties coming in and managing the IT environment?
Yeah. That I don't know. I'm not an identity expert, so I don't feel really qualified to answer the question, to be honest with you. I do know that most of the folks in the expo hall are not trying to solve my problem as an MSP. Most of them, right? They're building solutions for enterprise-sized clients to do identity and access management for an enterprise, right? And my business problem is a little different as I think about serving my hundreds of clients who have extraordinarily disparate technology platforms that may or may not be able to consume identity from the IDP that I select, right? Or the federation and, orchestration platforms that I select, right? So I feel like I can get to 80%, and then that last 20% is just really, really long, right? So we still have shared accounts that we use to access certain client systems that just can't play in the sandbox.
Yeah.
Right? And we just have to be really diligent about how we manage those privileged accounts. Right?
Yeah.
We keep them in a vault. You have to check them out. You know what I mean? All that stuff.
Yeah, and you think to yourself, it's probably legacy applications, but I think there's also just certain industry-focused applications that almost act like legacy. They're still like the current state, latest and greatest, but, from the standpoint of evolving with the technology, they're not doing it.
There's like the certain industries, you're right, like the industrial space is one that I think about a lot, right? Because they're, their OT environments or the process control environments, like they don't go update that stuff all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like some of those I walked into a factory a few months ago and there were like zip drives on computers that were running Windows 2000.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
those were disk drives only 5 years ago.
We can't touch that because that's the thing that does the batch control for making, the polymers. The vendor isn't in business anymore, and it's that kind of stuff. There's always going to be something.
Yeah. A lot of times those apps will see, we're going to have SAML single sign-on in a couple of years or something. Right. That's not even available. So I think listeners could be coming to this podcast from a couple different places. One is they've already got an MSP and they're trying to manage access. Another is just, the place where their organization is starting to look at using, kind of outsourcing some of this managed service work or some of the, maintenance of IT and information security and identity. And kind of what are some of the traits of, a good partner? What are things that stand out versus a not good partner?
Yeah. I guess the first thing I think of is the word partner. We all throw that word around, but it's a real word. And one of the characteristics of a good partnership in all parts of our lives, right? Like, is transparency and honesty about capability. What can I do well? What can I not do well? And I would hope that as you're evaluating relationships with different people to serve your organization, not gonna trust your gut. Like you can tell whether somebody's, if somebody says yes to everything, it's probably not true. There are things that I can't do well, and it's my job to be courageous enough to tell you, and risk using the deal. I have to say, sorry, I can't do this. I can't do that well. Or I would love to co-develop the ability to do this. I'll give you a break on this engagement so we can co-develop this model, but you have to let me use it for other potential clients, right? Maybe something like that. But
the thing I thought of when
you're
you said
afraid to do that. Yeah.
The thing I thought of when you said partnership is also there's two sides to a partnership, right? If all you are looking at is like what you're going to get, that's not a good starting point, right? And I think, I've worked in organizations where we looked at MSSPs and MSPs, and it's like, ultimately the bottom dollar is going to be one of the main drivers, but you can't kind of just go into and expect the world and the lowest price, and because what you're probably going to get is a lot of promises that will never be fulfilled. Yeah. To me, it's kind of like it's a give and take.
Yeah. Well, and getting an MSP or an MSSP onboarded to deliver the service to your organization is painful. Like, it's hard. There's real work. Like, we have to learn each other. I have to learn all the nuances and all the little, institutional knowledge that you, as the consumer of the service, may have well documented, but you probably don't. But at least I haven't met you yet. So if you're one of if there's a listener out here who has all the institutional knowledge really well documented, like, please call me. I'd love to serve you. But I haven't met that. I haven't met that client yet, right? There's always stuff that's locked up in people's heads that's really, really important. And learning those things is super, super, super important, and it takes time. And we have to document that stuff in our IT service management platform, and exchange of knowledge and standard operating procedures and all that kind of stuff. And then, deploying the tooling and all that, right? So it's time consuming and it's expensive. And so, to your point, you don't want to make a transactional decision on that relationship because 3 years later, you don't want to change. hurts to change. It costs money and time, and it's disruptive to change.
You mean change partners?
Change partners, correct.
Right.
Yeah. So hopefully you make a good choice and you have a good culture fit, and it's truly a push.
I kind of feel like something I've seen my clients struggle with is they'll get an MSP or MSSP relationship. It'll be written for, hey, we'll run your environment as it is on such and such a date. 3 years into the future, the contract hasn't changed, but the technology is really changing. And it's like, where does that leave you?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of depends what service you're subscribed to. We've been talking so far in the conversation about like MSP as if it's one thing, right? When for a really small client, the idea of being their MSP might be that I'm the total outsourced service. Like I am the outsourced IT department. They don't have anybody. So when you say I'm your MSP, that to that client, I'm everything. I'm the service desk. I'm monitoring. I'm patching. I'm, doing, new hire onboarding. I'm deploying PCs. I'm doing endpoint lifecycle. I'm doing all that stuff. Okay. But to another organization, to be their MSP might just mean that I'm the outsourced service desk, or I'm the outsourced monitoring, like network monitoring team, or I just do firewall management or whatever, right? It's a discrete service. So it depends what the service is, right? And it's just that it's not one size fits all.
I'm glad you made that distinction, because I think we sometimes get caught into like, okay, is it MSP? Is it MSSP? Is there a difference?
I do think there's a clear distinction.
So let's talk about that, because people might not be familiar with all the acronyms.
That is for some of our, our less experienced buyer, right? Or our client who, it's not always even an IT professional who I'm interacting with as the prime partnership. Sometimes it's an operating officer or somebody like that. And for an IT professional or a cyber or security professional, we kind of intuitively understand that there's a difference, right? The outsourced MSP is really, I use the word infrastructure and operations. Like we're keeping the thing up and running and operating it for you, right? So, we're making sure that all of your systems are available and ready to do their job, right? The security provider is really, like, I think of as the cyber operations, right? They're probably delivering a set of, they're probably operating a security operations center for you. They're probably ingesting your telemetry and your events into their SIEM. There might be providing you with endpoint detection and response tooling, and they might be doing some kind of vulnerability scans on a periodic or continuous basis to make sure that we're staying ahead of the vulnerabilities that are in the environment, whether they be configuration or patch or whatever the thing is, right? And there's got to be connectivity between those two parties, whether they're the same company delivering both of those capabilities, or you buy those things from two different companies. There has to be connectivity. So, like here at RSM, the MSSP team does vulnerability scans for our clients as part of their scope of service when you buy that service from us. But my team on the managed IT side does the vulnerability remediation. Right. So we have a certain set of stuff that our tooling knows how to patch, and that's not everything, right? I have not met the tool that knows how to patch everything, right? And so there's a handshake between that MSSP side of the house and the MSP side of the house that says, hey, you guys have been patching all the Microsoft stuff and you're patching all these third-party products, but here's this thing in your client's environment that has a vulnerability and is behind, right? What are we going to do to remediate that? And there's varying levels of complexity to that, but there's got to be a handshake between these two things.
So who's responsible for that handshake? Is it the client that's like, okay, we've got these two different services, and you guys should be talking to each other?
Yeah.
And ultimately, right, the customer is probably going to dictate that you guys should be doing
The answer
it.
varies a little bit. If you buy both of those services from us, you should expect us to be that coordinator, right? But if you are the kind of client that is that doesn't have an IT leader, doesn't have an IT staff, we should be doing that coordination and reporting to you, informing you. If you think in racy terms, right? I'm informing you that I did my job, right? And hopefully, through our relationship, you are learning. I have a lot of clients that had zero IT background, but over the course of the relationship, they've learned enough to be able to ask intelligent, informed questions of us, right? And I love that. That's the best kind of part, right? Is when we're both on the same page. But then there are other clients who have some more nuance and more experienced, and maybe they want to be more involved in that process. So we'll have the meeting between the MSSP side and the MSP side, and the client will show up to that meeting and really play an active role. Hey, this Log4j thing is out there, and like, we still find that bus. But it's stitched into our line of business application, and the vendor, doesn't really have a great remediation for. You end up in those kind of conversations, and hopefully the client is equipped to participate fully in an informed manner in that conversation.
So let me ask you for 3 questions that a client should ask their managed partner. Like, what are the 3 things that I would say, okay, I'm interested in this concept of some sort of managed service. So what are the 3 things they should be answering?
This is somebody who has not done outsourcing before, and they're thinking about doing it.
Yeah, let's take it from that angle and say, okay, what should they be asking?
Yeah. One of them is like, what widgets are we counting? Okay. Like, how do you determine what my fee is every month? Okay. So in the MSSP space, they are often counting the number of devices that have UDR installed on them, or the number of log sources that are sending logs of telemetry into the SIM, right? In the MSP space, we're often counting, sometimes for those like relatively simple, smaller clients, we're just like per supported user per month. That's the widget. I'm counting the number of employees that you have who could call the service desk and who carry a laptop. So what's the widget that I'm counting in order to determine and there are people out there, like, especially in the large enterprise space on the help desk side, it's, fee per service desk call per month. And you pay every time you call. Like, I personally don't like that model because it just doesn't incent the right behaviors. What's the service provider's incentive to drive down the volume of service desk calls and be prominent, right, in that model? Maybe I don't understand it. I don't know. But what's the widgets? What's another one? Who is going to, after the salesperson walks away, what's my escalation path? Who's my account manager? I'd like to meet them. I hope you've already met them through the sales process. But who's the escalation path? What happens if that person goes on PTO or vacation? How do I get escalation if I have a problem? And so I would want to know that. And what are the metrics that we're going to use to define success? And so that could be, response time and a service level agreement around response time. If it's a service desk thing, one of the things we report to our clients in a program that I run is I report the client satisfaction to my clients. So when you subscribe to our help desk, we offer your caller an opportunity to tell us how we did. 5 stars, right? 5 is good, 1 is bad. I report that back to all my clients. This is, 75 or 100 or 1,000 of your people responded to the survey last month. And this is how many people told us we did a great job. Here are the ones who told us we did a poor job. And this is what we did to remediate that and make sure it doesn't happen. So what's the standard for success that we're going to use to manage the relationship?
I love Jeff's question because what we're always trying to drive towards in these conversations is what are the actionable steps that people can come take away from those?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here processing when you have an MSP and an MSSP, it feels like identity becomes the area where it's like, where does that line kind of stop? Because you want to say, oh, MSSP, you do identity, but I would think in the world, the MSP is often running like Active Directory, which ends up being one of the most important identity systems.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of architecting the solution, like roles and responsibilities, but also realizing that the tech landscape changes every couple of years.
Sure.
What is the approach? And I always feel like a well-informed client is the best client because they understand the challenges, right?
Well, you don't have misunderstandings and surprises, right?
Right.
I want a well-informed client for sure. Where identity lives is kind of up to the client, right? You guys probably work with clients at yours, and probably there are people on this call, and some of the people are on this podcast that are consuming the podcast. Some of you work for the security team at your employer, and some of you might work for the IT team at your employer. I don't think there's consensus in the world about where identity lives in our universe of IT departments and cyber departments in the world. Right.
It's a question that comes up every time. Like, we sit with clients, like, who should it report to?
Yeah.
There isn't a right answer.
And I'm not a security professional, so I don't know the right answer, but I'm responsive to the client in that.
It should belong somewhere, though. Like, somebody should be doing it. Well, it does it as long as they know about it and they're responsible.
It's an afterthought, though. Like, we onboard clients all the time to our managed service, and getting to one of the first things we start to look at is when a hiring manager clicks on the configuration item in the portal that says, I need a new hire. Like, what is the authorization process for that?
Yeah.
What job roles exist? What authorizations? What identities do they need?
Yeah.
Right? Because a ton of my clients don't have a central identity provider.
So you trace those whole workflows and kind of figure out what are the sticking points.
Yep. And then, who gets to authorize which job roles? What kind of laptop do they get? What systems do I provision identity into? And so on. And then, because some of our pricing models have this price per supported user per month kind of concept. Like, what's the system of record for figuring out, like, what's a user and what's an active user? And then you start digging into their system, and I'm like, you told me that you have, 1,500 employees that work here, but there are like 3,800 active directory or Entra accounts that like aren't logged in every. So that doesn't feel right. Like, you told me 1,500 people work here. Why do you have an extra X number of thousand identities? And they're like, whoa.
But that drives that incents behavior on your part to say, wait a second, is the licensing correct? Because I know that is a challenge for a lot of organizations. Sure. Like, we don't actually know how many people are here.
It becomes a licensing thing because they're probably paying for a E3 or E5 or whatever license to Microsoft or whoever, right? Whatever your system is, for a person who hasn't been here for whoever. And they could still log in. Like, the identity's active, right? I would be worried about that, right? But we run across people like that all the time.
These kind of like workflowing processes sound to me like the perfect topic for workshops, 1 to 2 day workshops. I'm just wondering,
have you ever gotten it done in 2 days?
Well, at some point you have, right. At some point you got to say, okay, we're going to go with vendor A or vendor B. Yeah. Do you get that opportunity in a lot of, because I've seen RFPs be the way to kind of like get folks to come in, but it seems like it's such an important process to figure out, like, are we working with somebody who gets it and cares about our needs? Yeah. Or does it come down to, all right, put together a bunch of documentation and give us a price?
Yeah. The RFP thing's so tough. Like,
I'm on record as not liking them.
Well, no vendor likes them, right? Like,
I don't like doing them even on the customer side because they don't really it seems like it's a paperwork exercise.
But they exist, at least in principle, they exist to like keep the process objective, right? So it's not who took you to dinner, it's not who gave you tickets to the hockey game. It's ideally you would like to see that RFP processes are a way to keep things objective, but you're right, it ends up putting up this wall between your organization and potential service providers that's hard to penetrate. It's hard to get to what the real consumer of the service really cares about and wants, and be responsive to that, while still respecting the spirit of the RFP process and function. I struggle with it a lot. So I also don't like them, but I understand why they're late, right? You end up with like a procurement person who sometimes, larger organizations might have a procurement person who's assigned to IT or security or cyber and the office from the system. And over their career, they actually understand the things they're trying to help high, right? But then sometimes come across procurement people who are really just box checkers, have no clue what the service is that they're trying to facilitate, and they're just running through a process, and that's tough.
Yeah, I just feel like it's the RFP process, the spirit and the intent is good, but the execution in the real world is very lacking.
We can say that about so many things online.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about, so you talked before about, how do you measure some of the things that, the client might want to see as a consumer of that service.
Yeah.
But let's talk about risk maybe from that perspective. Are there other ways that we can say, okay, we've reduced the risk? You identified one, right? Hey, we found this account and guess what? It should have been, removed a while back, right? Licensing. Are there other risk reduction sort of metrics that come out of this kind of conversation or this type of service, I should say?
I mean, they're all over the place and they vary from client to client. And it around identity, it's like, how am I provisioning identity in a timely fashion? How am I deprovisioning identity? How am I ensuring that as a person for their life cycle in your organization doesn't just accumulate permission and access? As they get transferred from department to department, have they just accumulated access to everything they've ever had? And it has no relationship to their current role. We end up talking about stuff like that. We end up, on my side of things, we spend a ton of time talking about vulnerability, and patching and, what's the right mix of being hyper responsive to security related patches and firmware updates and fixes like that, while doing some kind of change management and testing around that stuff. A ton of our clients just want us to deploy it, right? We're like, hey, can we maybe let's deploy it to this test group first, and then next week we'll deploy it to everybody else. You know what I mean? So we end up talking about that kind of stuff. A lot of our middle market clients don't really have any concept of vendor management as it relates to IT. I spoke to someone just recently, and they're like, yeah, I went to this meeting. 4 different departments are evaluating AI solutions for their department. And I'm like, hold on, guys, why aren't you talking to IT? And I told this person, I said, you don't have shadow IT because you don't have a policy. Like, you don't have any kind of vendor intake that evaluates the risk of new solutions that are going to get in the environment. You haven't delayed in the business what the rules are. And so they can't be breaking the rules if there aren't any rules, right? Like, you know what I mean? So, and this person was like,
yeah, right. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
So, Mike, you've been super generous with your time. We're at a IT conference. Guess what? They're talking about AI.
Yeah.
So AI is changing everything in technology, right? It's going to change MSSP, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Kind of put your future-facing hat on, if you would, and just talk about where you see those changes coming.
Yeah.
How do you see this space evolving in the next couple of years because of AI?
Yeah. So the the two things that I think are important is, on the MSP side of things that are interesting, that are happening in AI. At least we're actually spending time and money and putting real focus on this. One of them is we use AI to do some problem management. So problem management historically has been a somewhat labor-intensive thing, and you can use tools to help you with it. But
so when you say problem management, can you describe what that is for people who aren't familiar?
Yeah. So problem management is an ITIL process, and problem management is looking for trends across multiple incidents or service requests. So, it's work, spark, not hard is the TLDR of problem management. I get a ton of calls about this one issue, and I could just solve the issue every time the call comes in, or I could try to find the root cause. And the root cause might be a technology root cause, it might be a training issue, it might be an organizational change management thing. But if I get, 25 calls a day about the same problem from the same client, and I'm not doing any kind of problem management, I might never identify them. Then I might just, my service desk operation might be super inefficient, and my clients, so I always tell my clients, if your people are talking with my people, they're not doing their job. So I want to make it so that your people never have to call my people. Okay? If your person's calling the service desk, they're not doing their job. So if I could reduce that 25 calls a day on this one topic to a handful or zero, that's the bullet point. It makes everybody happy. But there's some AI stuff that we can do to look at the natural language text in the body of our case or ticket history, if you will, and find out what are the things that are happening. I use AI to look at, I told you I run that client experience program for our leadership business, and we use AI to look for themes that clients complain about. What are the things that multiple people at the same client might be complaining about, or what are the things that multiple people across our full spread of clients might be complaining about in their case feedback, and then we go actually take action on that. So that's important for sure. Problem management and client sat. And then the other thing is, we've evolved onto a service desk portal and build out our ticket, right? And some of the more advanced systems today are, as you fill out the ticket, they're starting to suggest solutions to you for self-service. I think you'll see that accelerate in just the maturity of their solutions and their ability to let you solve your own problem without the service desk, whether it's an insourced or outsourced service desk, having to have a person do something. I think you'll see that stuff go. I used to hate these things. Try and just talk to a person who can solve. I'm an old guy, right? I want to talk to a person who can solve my problem. I'm starting to pivot on that. And now I'm getting to a place where the solutions that are being offered to me as I fill out the digital form are actually better than talking to a person.
They're getting so much better. I mean, You see it all over the place. I still find myself sometimes where you can tell they're the dated old way. You're just I want to speak to a human.
Or they ask you the same question 5 times.
Yeah.
Right? You call your bank or your credit card company and you answer the questions to Bob, and then Sally asks you the exact same questions. And I'm
annoying.
Why? Right? Maybe some of those questions, you guys are identity. Maybe some of those questions are authentication questions. That's fine, I get that. But
they're continuous identity.
Continuous identity verification.
Zero trust.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand.
Zero memory from call to
zero
call.
Trust and zero memory.
Right. Well, part of it might be that somebody got injected into the call process, right? If I have a direct line or something like that, how do you know it's that person on the line? Yeah. It's a slippery slope. Yeah. My background is help desk.
Yeah.
So when you started talking about, problem management, we had an entire team, this would have been early 2000s, that was responsible for writing, all the procedure documentation and say, okay, if a caller calls with this problem, here are the steps to fix it. AI, I think, changes that quite a bit because now that information theoretically can be generated by AI.
Yes.
Well, what happens? You still need people to review it because what you don't want to do is have it hallucinate, which is a nice way of saying lie.
Yes.
To give you incorrect directions on how to solve something. So it's a very fascinating world we're in right now, where AI is literally touching like every single part of the journey of a customer through any support mechanism, whether it's they hit the help desk, right? And if the help desk has a problem, they're referring to documentation. All that's being, set up through potentially AI.
Yeah.
Identity problems are part of that. Again, you run help desk, you're probably getting phone calls for my password doesn't work, or I can't get my mobile device connected to the MDM, right? This is we're a little inside baseball. We had some problems with this, right? Yeah, exactly, right? So things like that these are all identity problems that are coming in through the first point of contact is either a web form, right? My ticketing system, my TSM, or I'm picking up the phone and calling somebody. A lot of this stuff is just changing the way it's working.
I kind of feel like that companies are sometimes afraid to unleash the full power of AI. So, for example, I called in for a pharmacy prescription renewal, and it was like, I can help you with that. Give me the prescription number. It's like, I don't know the prescription number.
Yeah.
Can you tell me all of the prescriptions I have with you, and I'll tell you the one that I want? Well, I think their AI was definitely smart enough to pull that back. But at some point, someone put guardrails on the AI and said, we're not going to do that, right? That's too much of an opportunity for fraud or whatever their concern was.
HIPAA concerns, all kinds of stuff.
Concerns, but like, man, that would have been like super useful. Instead, I was like, talk to human.
Yeah. I went to a client experience conference recently, less than a year ago. And in the client experience world, one of the things that happens is this concept of close the loop, right? So if somebody gives you negative feedback, like somebody should reach back out to them and at least send them an email and acknowledge their pain, right? Or maybe call them, whatever, right? And one of the vendors in that space was touting their ability to do close the loop without human intervention, right? So the agent can reach back out to the person who gave you negative feedback and make them heard. And I just found it ironic that like you're using a system to make your customer feel heard by an empathetic human, but they never get to talk to him, right? And at what point do our agents just talk to each other? That's what
that's a lot of transactions taking place. They're going to be agent to agent, and then you guys figure it out. Let me know what you decide.
Your agent,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It makes us all sound very important, right?
Yeah.
Agents.
Yeah.
You've been very generous with your time, and it's getting loud here in the conference kind of expo area. Like,
I feel like I'm
lunch is
yelling
being
into the
served.
microphone.
Right? Yeah.
Talking a little bit back now.
We should be fine.
Yeah.
You do photography on the side, and we were kind of talking a little bit about like geeking out maybe some of the tools and stuff that we're kind of using here.
You guys have the audience probably can't see it, but you guys have like a really cool portable video and audio rig here.
So thank you. It works for what we do.
Yeah.
I want to know, from your photography expertise and your history, like what is your
expertise is definitely too strong of a term.
Okay.
Okay.
Your interest in it. Like, what is your favorite thing to photograph, and like, what is it about photography that like you just enjoy it so much?
I like travel photography, so I'm the person who probably doesn't pick up the camera often enough. So I definitely take it on certain kinds of trips, and I think it gives you an opportunity to look at the world with intentions. So anybody can pick up a camera or your phone and just snap it, right?
A lot of people will say the best camera is the one you have with you.
The one you carry.
Right. And for a lot of people, it is their phone, right?
That's right. Yeah. But I'm a nerd, so I like to have a real camera with me. But I do travel photography, and I like to take pictures of wildlife and birds. Birds are cool because they're a technical challenge. They're this thing that's moving quickly, often really far away, and I still haven't taken a good bird pic. So I've taken some bird pics that I was like, okay, that's cool. But there are certain things in life that I think some of the best things in life are the things that you've never done getting good at. Like, people who play golf, I think, probably chase that thing where they're never done getting good at it. I play tennis. You're never getting good at tennis. I'm a sailor. You never get done getting good at sailing. And photography is another thing. You're never done. There's always more to achieve and try to gain.
What is your white whale of photography? Like if you could take a photograph of anything, what would it be?
Like that.
Nothing?
No, I don't.
Particular bird, particular scene, nothing. Just
no. That's not the way I think about it. Okay. So it's about capturing a moment, like capturing it in an intentional way, right? Like there's a YouTube channel the guy runs that my daughter expressed recently an interest in photography, so I introduced him to this guy's YouTube channel, and we were watching one of his intro to photography episodes, and he was like, there's an improperly exposed shot, there's a properly exposed shot, and there's a creatively correct shot. So correct shot and creatively correct shot are two different things. And the creatively correct shot part is where you bring your art to the science. And maybe it's you chose to get down on a knee and take it from a different angle, or you chose to, expose the shot in a way that emphasized, something in the foreground and blurred the background in a creative way, or whatever that thing is.
Get that bokeh effect, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I don't have a white whale. If not, that's a good question, because I don't have an answer to that. There's no bowl. I don't have a bowling for thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. As we've grown this podcast, right? We've introduced video, I think, in the last year and a half or so. I've gotten into things that I hadn't thought about before, right? Before we were audio, now we're video. And so it's like, okay, camera angles and lighting and exposure and framing of shots. And I'm not an expert on it at all. I try to find something that works with the gear that we have, the environment that we're in. And now I'm getting into color correction.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's like, okay, what does pleasing look like to me might be very different for someone else, right? And so you get oversaturated colors sometimes, or maybe that is pleasing.
Color graded, the tool like that you and I were talking about that you
DaVinci Resolve, right?
It started as a color graded product and became a video aid. So,
And do my eyes perceive colors the same way as someone else?
And do you want it to be hyper realistic?
Right.
Or are you trying for an effect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just so much to it, and I find it fascinating. When are you
guys going to start wearing makeup in the
I'll wear like stage makeup for a heavy metal band. I'll do that. That would probably help this at anything. All right, let's go ahead and leave it there for this episode. Mike, thank you so much for taking time. Thanks for being here. I think this is such an interesting area that we haven't really touched on, is like that whole managed provider kind of community. Yeah. So hopefully people got a sense out of that.
I think people are going to love this episode.
Yeah,
I think. Especially we got into the conversation about help desk and the real world stuff, and that's what the identity practitioner is dealing with.
Shout out to all my help desk people. That's where I started.
You could if you keep going down the rabbit hole, you could grab the HR and payroll team into this. Because you guys are identity professionals, right? It's not just IT or even cyber. Right. You have to have the business connections.
A lot of IM is just business process. Now the technology is sort of the third leg over here, but so much of people and process.
Yep.
All right, leave it here for this week. Shout out to Shirley again and RSM for bringing us out here. Let's see what else. IDACpodcast.com. Like and subscribe.
What else?
IDAC.TV.
No, IDACpodcast.tv.
I should
That's
know
our
this.
YouTube channel.
Just go to IDACpodcast.com. It's there, the YouTube channel.
You link to everything else.
I know. I've got too many domain names for the podcast now. I'm starting to lose track of it. I need
Was this defensive domain name registration?
A little bit.
Okay.
But also, it's all right, how do we make sure that we got things covered? I need a PAM system for all my domain names or something. I don't know. That's a whole different.
We manage for the MSP. Okay, well, so you could become a customer.
All right, well then maybe we shop out. If only I had an episode that I could lean into and say, what should I be asking my provider? Yeah. Okay, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time with us. And we'll be there for this week. Thanks everyone for watching and or listening, and we'll talk with y'all in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.